welcome. This is Rebecca Rebley from the My Best Life Now show. And today I'm so excited to have Ryan Doel with us. Ryan is an osteopath here in the Hamilton area. And I love Ryan because he is so knowledgeable about health and the human body, and he's a pretty funny guy too. So I love talking to him. So just a little bit about Ryan's background. He is a graduate of the Canadian Academy of Osteopathy in Hamilton, Ontario, and he is a member of the Ontario Osteopathic Association and the Canadian Institute of Classical Osteopathy. Now, Ryan's interest in osteopathy stems from a strong belief in the innate ability of the body to heal itself and also a desire to be of service. And Ryan has an amazing background in athletics, nutrition, and alternative therapies, and this helps him to create a well-rounded approach to health. He maintains his practices in both Hamilton and Brantford and will accept new patients in both locations. So we will be providing the information in the description of this video, and as well that you will be able to get in touch with Ryan if you should want to do so. So Ryan, thank you for being with us.
You're very welcome.
My first question for you, just to help people understand a little better what osteopathy is, could you give us maybe a description of what's involved with the treatment and just a kind of a general idea of what osteopathy is?
Okay. Treatments generally are going to involve initially a health history, just to have that information down. It helps us catch any red flags or anything that may lead us into further questioning. But the primary part of assessment in osteopathy is the physical exam. So we're evaluating the body, we're evaluating symmetry, we're evaluating center of gravity, we're evaluating the motion characteristics of all the different parts of the body, and then evaluating how those areas work together, right? And that's the key, is not that we're not evaluating individual portions of the body on their own. We're evaluating the whole body and how all the pieces fit into the whole.
So I think that's important for people to realize that it's a whole body approach.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So first of all, who would benefit from osteopathic treatment, and what kind of conditions are treated with osteopathy? Really,
I mean, it's the easy answer is that everyone can benefit from osteopathy. But it is true. Regardless of the types of benefits, the types of outcomes that one can have, anyone can benefit at some level from it. And it can be preventative, it can be curative, or it can be palliative. And it depends on the person who comes to you as a patient and where they are in their journey. What's different about osteopathy is that we don't treat conditions per se. We treat people. We treat the patient as an individual, and oftentimes the conditions that they came in with tend to get better. Now, the reason that we don't treat conditions specifically is that one person may come in with back pain, and another person may come in with back pain, and even though it may be in the same location, it's there for very different reasons. So we don't have a protocol for treatment. We don't have a set approach or a set list of techniques that we would use for any particular symptom pattern. It's more a matter of treating that individual and delivering the appropriate treatment for that person, rather than going through a prescribed set of techniques or approaches for a specific condition.
So Ryan, if you could tell us, what would be some of the important aspects for somebody to consider before deciding to undergo osteopathic treatment?
Really, it's just being in the right mindset. Because osteopathy is treating individuals, and because we're looking at integrative changes in terms of their health, they need to make sure that they're in the right headspace, right? Because we're not necessarily treating symptoms. Although the symptoms almost always will improve or disappear, the symptoms aren't the primary goal. So when people come, sometimes they're a little confused as to the approach, only because in our culture, we've been conditioned to treat symptoms and to measure success of healthcare through the either presence or the non-presence of symptoms, right? And as we go through and we start to treat, those symptoms will improve, but that's not the measure of the success of the treatment. The measure of the success of the treatment is the overall functioning of the body.
So do you find that the mindset part of it is one of the hardest to address?
It's not really up to us to address. I mean, we can educate as much as we can. Really, it's a matter of the individual has to kind of get over these programmed ideas as to what health is, right? We're kind of programmed to believe that health is a lack of symptoms and that disease is the presence of symptoms. But in reality, a lot of the things that we consider symptoms are just normal, everyday processes that the body's using for either cleaning out or for adapting to certain conditions that it is presented with in everyday life. And now, just to add to that, another aspect of most alternative healthcare or complementary healthcare, but something that osteopathy takes very seriously, is the concept of mind, body, spirit, right? So a lot of people will talk about it, but and kind of give it lip service, but not really put it to practice, right? So in osteopathy, we're treating the body aspect, but what's important to understand is that if we look at mind, body, spirit, we kind of draw it like a triangle, right? Any influence to one corner of the triangle will influence all the other corners, for the better or for the worse of that individual. So if there's a detrimental influence to the body, there's going to be a detrimental influence to the mind and spirit as well. But by the same token, if there is a positive influence to the body, then there's going to be a positive outcome for the mind and spirit. It may not necessarily be readily observable, but it will be there at some level.
So osteopathy really looks at treating the body, and then how does that affect the other two parts of the triangle?
Yeah, and it's not always predictable because obviously people and our emotions and our psychology and our spiritual connections are very complex, yes, right? Very. But the effects will be there. The other important aspect of that is that osteopathy is using the structure of the body to access those other things. Okay, so osteopathy treats through the structural, through the anatomy, and corrects the anatomy and the structure as a means to access the physiology. Okay, so that's our access to the underlying health in the body and our access to the innate healing mechanisms of the body, right? Is that by dealing with the structure, by dealing with any dysfunctions or any restrictions within that system, we can influence the physiology. Now, if you look at it from a physiological level, then the physiology is going to influence things like mood, right? And it's going to do so through hormones and neurotransmitters, all of which are produced in different parts of the body, brains, endocrine glands, things like that. But if the structure is dysfunctional, then the function of that structure will also be dysfunctional, right? So that's kind of our way in to the mind and the spirit, is to access it from the structure, through the physiology, and then those things will be changed as well.
I love how that looks at it all together.
It's fascinating, it really is, and it really drives home the point that all of the pharmacology that the body requires is already there. Right? The body is able to produce all the chemicals, all of the substances that are required innately.
So the body is able to heal itself.
It is, and it's designed that way. And if it wasn't designed that way, we probably wouldn't be here. But that innate ability to heal itself is what we're trying to access, and we do it by removing obstacles to health, things that are getting in the way. So when the structure is dysfunctional, it tends to influence blood movement, both arterial and venous. It tends to influence the lymphatics in the body, and it influences the nerve conduction. and the ability of the nervous system to do its job in terms of communication with all the different tissues.
So what are some of those things that get in the way then?
Well, sometimes it's easy to think of metaphors, right? So if we're thinking of the blood in the body, right, we can think of it kind of like the plumbing in the body, okay? We don't want too much fluid in any one area, and we don't want a drought of fluid in any one area, right? All the tissues in the body require what they require, and the majority of that is delivered through the blood. And then the blood carries away all of the waste product and carries away the leftovers that the tissue no longer needs. Now, if you think of a garden hose and water running through it, if you were to step on that garden hose or put a kink in it, well, you've now altered the fluid that's going through it. Well, it would be no different in our body. If there's a compression of an artery or compression of a vein, that's going to alter the fluid going in or out of any one tissue. And if we've altered the blood supply to or from a tissue, you're going to alter its overall health. And if you alter the health of a tissue, then you've altered the health of the body, because that tissue isn't able to function optimally.
So that kind of leads me to my next question, I guess.
Okay.
How would someone expect to feel, possibly, after having an osteopathic treatment? What could one expect? You know, I've seen all different kinds of things, from, you know, laughing to to not feeling great to anything. So
it depends on two things. It depends on where the patient is coming into the treatment, and also the treatment itself. Right, the treatment will be tailored to the individual on that day. So we're not going to try to make major changes if someone has come in and they're not feeling well, or maybe they've had an extremely stressful couple of weeks.
And you gauge all this through your discussion with them and what you're observing in the body?
Of course, through discussion. Obviously, if they let you know, hey, my parents passed away last week, well, chances are they're not going to be in a place where the body's going to be able to accept a vigorous treatment, or something that would be fairly intense in terms of changes, right? So at that point, you're just trying to build them back up a little bit. Remove some of the stresses on the body, reduce some of the strain, some of the burden on the physiology of the body, just kind of shave off the edges, clean it up a little bit, and then their body has an opportunity to rest and heal. So in terms of responses, you're going to see a lot of variation. Some people feel very tired and sleepy afterwards. Some people feel very invigorated and they have lots of energy. Some people will have some soreness or achiness. A good way to look at it is a post-workout type sore, right? Where it's just stiff and achy, right? And it's often because we've activated parts of the body that have been either underused or maybe a little bit dormant, right? And all of a sudden we've woken them back up and they're put back to work, and they complain a little bit about that because they were happy to be doing less, right? But the responses can vary. Sometimes people will feel a little bit under the weather, and it's because we have opened up pathways of detoxification, or we've opened up areas where there was congestion, and there was changes to the tissue in terms of its overall health, and then we are able to dump that back into the systemic circulation, or back into the overall function of the body, and then the body has an opportunity to clean it out and to get rid of it.
The body might protest a little bit?
It does sometimes. It does. And it's not that it's protesting, it's just it has an influence, right? If all of a sudden the resources of the body have to be diverted to a certain process, then it will do that as long as it can. But sometimes it's at the expense of other processes, right? Anyone who's had a little bit too much to drink can attest to that, right? Where the body will prioritize, it's always going to evaluate the surroundings, its environment, both external and internal, and it's going to do the thing that's most important. Right?
Because, like you said, the body knows what it's doing. So.
Well, yeah, it's far more intelligent than we are.
Yeah.
You know, we've learned an awful lot about the human body and about physiology and chemistry and biology and all these different fields within health and within humanity, but I think we're still just brushing the surface.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too.
Right? So if we can do our best to just get things out of the way and then let the body figure it out, oftentimes that's it's going to lead to the best outcomes.
Yeah. And I love that about the osteopathic approach. So.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes for people to accept that, because the outcome that is best is not always the outcome that they were looking for.
Ah, yes.
Right? The outcome that is most helpful long term to the overall health of that person is not necessarily always pleasant.
Or the outcome that they think it should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen some people maybe put on weight because we've settled things out and the physiology has decided, okay, I can function at a better level now, so I can digest better, which means I'm absorbing more nutrients and I'm able to utilize the nutrients that are coming in through my diet in a better way. So I'm going to do what I always wanted to do, but wasn't able to.
Yeah.
Right?
Which I guess comes back to the mindset thing again. Right?
Of course. So it's a matter of just perspective and understanding what the overall goals are. And there's been some people that, you know, you sit down, you have a chat, and they decide it's not for them. Right? They're few. I haven't met many, maybe a couple. But some people are just looking for symptom relief.
Yeah.
Right? And they're not willing to deal with what it's going to take to get to that point. If it's not going to be a quick fix. And that's fine. You know, everyone's in a different place.
Yeah, I guess everyone's going to have their own journey with it. So.
Of course, and it's all about understanding what our goals are, and then what do we need to do to achieve those, right? And are we willing to deal with the stuff in between to get to where we want?
Which is not always easy for some people.
No, and so, sometimes it's a matter of people just aren't in the right space. So sometimes maybe they need to clean up other parts of their life and then come back to it at a later time. I've seen that happen, and it worked very well for some people.
Good stuff. My next question for you, Ryan. So, as you know, Dieter and I are just finishing up our own 40-day cleanse. So I just wanted to ask you some specific questions in regards to cleansing, whether it's like a juice cleanse or another sort of detox program. So, what benefits could that have for a person if they do decide to go ahead with something like that?
Obviously, we don't want a buildup of toxins in the body. It's detrimental to the overall health of the tissues, and you can take it right down to the cellular level, right? If you have a buildup of toxins, metabolites, or environmental poisons, whatever it may be, obviously that's going to have an adverse effect on our overall health, because it's going to have an adverse effect on the overall function right down to the cell, up through a tissue level, and then in between as well. If the overall burden of toxins in the body becomes more than what the body can handle, then we start to have problems with our elimination as well, right? So if our elimination is not working properly, or if the elimination is overburdened, then those toxins start to build up. But I would also say that the body needs to be in a place where it can handle that.
Okay.
Right? So you wouldn't want someone who has a fairly low vitality or has a lot of things that are wrong to go through an intense cleanse if their system is not able to handle it. Right? Because obviously that's only going to add to the burden. It's only going to add to the stress on the body, because it's not in a place to be able to do it safely.
Right. So Ryan, with many of the people that we've been speaking to, they have said that we just live in an environment that is overly taxing on the body. It's just a very toxic environment that we live in. And that many of the lifestyle diseases or degenerative diseases that people experience are, in fact, could be preventable. Is that something that you can speak to, and from the osteopathic perspective?
Yeah, well, it's obvious to most that the environment that we live in is much different than how it used to be. Environmental pollution in terms of air or water, there's chemicals and pollutants in our foods, pesticides, a lot of different things will play into the overall burden on the body. And obviously those are going to influence the body mainly through adding another layer of stress, another layer of burden to the system that may already be overloaded. Now, I can't speak to the diet and things like that. Obviously, a good diet is important. It's clean as possible, you know. But in terms of osteopathy and how it can help is looking at it from the standpoint of if the machine is running properly, then it's more resilient and it's better able to deal with those burdens in a timely manner, in an efficient manner, so that it can take those toxins, take those pollutants, filter them out and eliminate them from the body as quickly as possible. And by doing that, then there's less buildup in the tissues, right? Oftentimes, if there's been an accumulation of environmental pollutants or toxins in general built up in the body, it can be from exposure, but it can also be because those eliminatory pathways haven't been functioning at optimal levels, right? So if the liver and kidneys haven't been able to filter out the blood appropriately, or if the bowels and bladder are not functioning in a way to eliminate all of the toxins there, then that buildup starts to occur. So oftentimes, treatment is going to help bring those systems back into equilibrium and bring them back to their optimal function, so that those eliminatory and detoxification pathways can function at their normal level again. And obviously that's going to have a great help to the overall burden of toxins and pollutants. And then it's just a matter of whether or not we're eliminating the number of toxins and pollutants coming into the body as well.
So do you have any advice, Ryan, for someone that is going through a cleansing process of dealing with some of those detoxification symptoms that we're all familiar with?
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a number of symptoms that are common. Some of them are expected responses, I would say. Obviously, an increase in bowel movements, an increase in urination. Those would be wanted because that's how the body's going to eliminate a lot of these toxins that have been stirred up or have been released from the tissue through that detoxification process. There are numbers of other symptoms. Often people complain of fatigue or headaches or general malaise. Some people will get stomach cramps, things like that. Sometimes those symptoms are because people went into a cleanse either too soon or with too much intensity, or sometimes it's because the body itself needs further treatment and it needed to be in a better place overall because that detoxification process is fairly intense. It requires quite a bit of energy and quite a bit of resources from the body's perspective.
So if the body doesn't have the energy to keep up with it, then it can be a little more challenging.
Well, yeah, if the function of those eliminatory pathways has been adversely influenced because of issues with the structure that are influencing the physiology, if the liver is under-functioning, or if the bowels aren't able to push things through properly, or any of these kind of things, if the circulatory system or the lymphatics are not cleansing out and moving appropriately, then what you end up with is you end up with congestion and all of these toxins that have been stirred up but then can't get out. And I think a lot of those other symptoms are often because the toxins just can't get out. So those elimination pathways need to be corrected first before someone attempts to go through a detoxification process or program to make sure that the body is able to handle it, right? And then obviously the detoxification program should be done appropriately as well for that individual, right?
And so I guess that's something that osteopathy would address, was helping with those elimination pathways, like we talked about earlier.
Yes, osteopathy can address the function of the machine, the function of the body, and make sure that it's primed and able to carry out all those functions that are being asked of it. And then it's a matter of choosing the appropriate detox and doing it for the appropriate length of time, and all that stuff is best discussed with someone who is a specialist in those areas.
Is there anything else that people can do to help with those elimination pathways besides having a treatment, whether it's walking or Tell us.
Gentle exercise is always optimal. Because the body is going to be going through a fairly intense process where its resources are being diverted to very specific processes. We do want movement, we do want activity, but you wouldn't want to be doing anything very intense that would sap the body of those resources. So walking is great. Cycling at moderate levels would be okay. Swimming, preferably not in chlorinated water, would be helpful as well. The main reason is that they're rhythmical activities, they're full body, but they're fairly low impact, right? And they're not going to strain the body or divert resources away from that process. And then obviously keeping our water intake at appropriate levels is important. Making sure we're getting enough rest, right? The sleep portion of the day is very important because that's when most of the healing actually occurs.
You know, I can speak to this because I know I've had a hard time with sleeping on and off throughout the years, and I know a lot of people really do have a tough time with sleeping. So what could be some of the reasons that people have a tough time sleeping? Why is this such an issue for so many people?
Okay. Well, obviously it's going to be multifactorial, right? There's going to be a lot of influences there. Some of it's going to be habitual, right? Just our everyday lifestyle. Some of it's going to be environmental, you know, in terms of noises or light pollution, things like that are going to influence us. Stress levels obviously play a large role there. Our overstimulatory kind of culture where we're constantly involved with electronics and things like that, they tend to raise the stimulation levels in the body. So those kind of things close to bedtime are usually going to make it harder to fall asleep. But from a structural standpoint, we also want to deal with that balance between the rest and digest function and our fight or flight system, right? And if those two systems aren't working in coordination with each other, then we tend to have problems. And it could be a trouble falling asleep, it could be trouble staying asleep. Or sometimes it's just not very deep sleep. So we wake, and even though we slept through the night, we don't feel very rested, right?
I call it cat sleep.
Yes, you know, an 8-hour cat sleep, right? But
it's not very restful.
No, it gets us through. It gets us to the point where we can get up and do it again the next day. But we're not gaining that deep, restful sleep where the healing processes really occur.
Now, I have noticed that since doing the cleanse, or since the start of the cleanse, that I've been sleeping through the night and sleeping much better. What role does the digestive system play?
Part of it's digestion. Obviously, if the digestive system is functioning higher, functioning more optimally, we're going to be breaking down and assimilating the nutrients in our food far more readily. And that's very important because these are all the building blocks to our tissues, right? And then we have to make sure that the digestive system can then deliver those building blocks to the appropriate areas of the body. The other aspect of it is the elimination, right? So if the body is able to reduce its overall burden, reduce its overall stress and strain through a detoxification program and through proper functioning elimination systems, then obviously it's going to be in a better place to heal. It's going to be in a better place to utilize the nutrients it has at its disposal.
And clearly osteopathy would help with this as well.
Well, osteopathy will help with some aspects of it, particularly making sure that the machine itself is running properly. I like to think of it kind of like a car, where if you had a Lamborghini, right, a high-octane, a very finely tuned machine, and you fill it full of leaded fuel, obviously it's not going to go very well for you. You're probably going to blow an engine, and it's a very expensive mistake. But by the same token, if you have a car that's not running well, that's not tuned properly, where the tires are bald and the alignment's off and things like that, you can fill it full of all the best fuel in the world. You can give it rocket fuel, and it's still not going to drive well, right? It might drive a little bit better, but it's not going to last. Or sometimes what happens is you can give it all that good stuff, and it can't handle it. It actually isn't even able to break it down and assimilate or utilize the benefits of that fuel, right? Our bodies are very similar, so we need that proper functioning digestive system. And that requires, as we spoke about at the beginning, proper nerve function, proper circulatory system, and proper lymphatics, right? If any one of those systems isn't doing its job because of a structural obstruction or a structural dysfunction, then those systems are going to be underperforming. And then obviously that takes away from the performance of the other systems in the body that require those building blocks.
So Ryan, you have given us a ton of information today, a lot of information. And, you know, maybe for somebody who is out there and doesn't really know where to go from here, or feels overwhelmed by all of that and thinking, well, you know, I'll just love to eat cheeseburgers and sit on the couch or whatever, you know. But can you speak to what somebody could do now, or what would be the steps?
I think the important thing is to start slow. Speak to professionals, find the people who know how to help you through it, and then make a plan, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be staged. You know, you can start with baby steps, right? Whether that be making small changes to diet, changing the structure, getting treatment to increase the resiliency of the body, increase the functionality of the body, let all those systems come back up to their normal function. And when that happens, oftentimes that in and of itself is going to start that process. Right, so just getting all of the systems in the body running properly is going to start the detoxification process. And it will happen in a way that is okay for your body because it knows best. It's not going to try to dump everything that you've accumulated over 40 years in 3 days. It doesn't work that way. The body will take the parts that it can deal with and that it has the resources for, and it will handle that. And then once the body's in a better place, then you can kind of progress with that plan and maybe speak with someone about going through a proper detox or something along those lines.
So patience?
Patience is a virtue.
Go slowly.
Yes. And understand that even though there may be ups and downs, there may be bumps in the road, it's the long-term goals that we're looking for here. It's the long-term health, and it's the long-term stability of that health, right? We're not looking for quick fixes. We're not looking for Band-Aids. Generally speaking, whether it be a naturopathic approach, detoxification, dietary, things like that, or whether it be an osteopathic approach, we're looking for stable long-term change that people can work with.
Yeah. And I guess that really speaks to the mindset part of it that we talked about in the beginning.
It does. And it can be something that starts slow, or it can be something that people jump into head first, right? But they have to understand that it is a process. It's not something that's going to be a quick fix, right? It can have very quick changes. It can have very quick effects, but the process itself will be over the course of at least half a year or so usually, because that's how long it takes for the physiology in the body to get up to speed with the changes that we've made, whether it be dietary, whether it be structural and functional in terms of the systems. A great example of that is smoking. You know, if people have been smoking their whole lives, it doesn't matter how long you've smoked. It's fairly well known at this point that after about 7 years, you have completely new lungs, and they're pink and healthy, and all of the risk factors that are common to smokers are gone after about 7 to 10 years. So even though you may feel overwhelmed at the moment, it is something that you can do over time. It doesn't have to happen all at once, and we're looking at those long-term changes and the long-term benefits.
I think that's good to know. And letting go of how you think it should be.
Yes.
And allowing it to be what it is. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's good. So Ryan, again, a lot of great information here today. For someone maybe who is new to learning about osteopathy and they want to find out more, where can they go to learn more?
Obviously, if they have any contact with an osteopath, then the best thing to do is to speak to someone directly and receive a treatment, or at the very least go in for a consultation. They'll find that very informative because it's an approach that isn't really well understood. Sometimes the best way to learn about it is to experience it. if they're looking for someone, if they don't know of an osteopath or an osteopathic manual practitioner in their area, the best place for them to go is to the Ontario Osteopathic Association website. That would be a very good start. There's also another website available for the Canadian Institute of Classical Osteopathy, which will describe a little bit of the basics for osteopathy and some of the differences in approaches and perspectives that they may find when they're out there.
And how can they get in touch with you? Because you're awesome. So
they can get in touch with me in Hamilton. My phone number would be 905-906-5355. Or they can contact me in Brantford, and that can be done through the Holistic Healing Arts website, which is a clinic on King George Road, or by phone at 519-751-3488.
And I hope if they are considering that they do call you, because you're amazing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today.
No worries. My pleasure.